Hello, my fabulous Wimby friends. Welcome back to Local Wimby with Maxie. If you love coffee, community, and creative magic, do I have an episode for you? Today we're talking about Beaver Tales Coffee, aka the beating heart of caffeine and connection on the Coupeville Wharf. At the helm of this cozy, soul-warming operation, none other than Michelle Calvin and Tony Cladusbid, the brilliant duo bringing people together over perfectly brewed cups of joy, delicious food, and the Coupeville Creative District's community project and creative hub, which in simple terms means it's about to become the ultimate gathering place for artists, dreamers, and doers of all kinds. This space was Michelle's vision, rooted in a desire to honor her Indigenous family and the many teachings passed down through generations. It has become Tony's passion as well, a way to carry forward the living culture of his Lower Skagit ancestors who lived along these shores long before Coupeville ever had a name. This is not a reenactment or a memorial. This is culture, alive and evolving, honored through story, food, language, and connection. When you visit the wharf, Michelle and Tony invite you to explore the entire area, experience Native culture as it lives, breathes, and thrives today. Listen to stories being told by the people who carry them and support Native-owned spaces that exist not to be remembered, but to be seen and experienced. Acknowledging and supporting the Indigenous people who are still here, still building, and still carrying incredible stories forward. If you are wondering what a creative district is made up of, let me break it down. Creative districts exist to nurture local talent, support the arts, and create spaces where culture and commerce come together. And Beaver Tales? It's stepping up in a big way, transforming into a true hearth for our upcoming programs, events, and collaborations that celebrate Coupeville's creative spirit. Plus, I want to discuss the 10 rules of the canoe. Don't know what that is? You will find out. So grab your favorite brew, or if you're driving, at least think about a coffee lovingly and get ready to hear how Michelle and Tony are brewing up more than just lattes. They're helping fuel the very soul of Coupeville. Hi, Michelle and Tony. Thank you for joining me today. I love great stories, and yours is a doozy. Let's start with your backstory. Where are you both from, and what brought you to Whidbey Island and Laconner?
What brought me to Whidbey Island? It could be many things. I could have said no to coming to this place because I don't agree sometimes with history, time, place, telling of the events. But it's important for me to be here to correct the errors, to bring an understanding of who we are as a people that don't know us. But yet we live right in the midst of them. Born and raised here, never went anywhere else. The land we're on today, we ceded this land and gave it up as part of our treaty rights. One of the interesting things about ceding your land is we sit right now on something that we never ceded in the water.
Can you define for the listener what you mean by ceded?
Sure. Ceded and unceded is a definition they use for land and the acquiring of it by the non-natives.
Okay.
Ceded land is what we agreed to give up in order to live the lifestyle that was agreed upon in the treaty.
Okay.
Unceded land is land that the government took and sold at auction at a cheap price after our reservations were established and sold off portions of our land.
Okay, glad you explained that. I don't think most people would have realized that that's what ceded meant. So how did you two meet?
Oh, that's my turn. Tony and I met as a result of a leaky sink in my Laconner shop. And I needed a plumber. And I had called around, and a good friend of mine that is on the reservation in Laconner, recommended Tony. And so Tony walked into the shop. I wasn't there at the time, but he walked into the shop. And then I called him a few weeks later because I really, really needed a plumber. I had water shooting out of my sink, and he agreed to come in and help me with that. That's how we met. But it's interesting because I knew his whole family.
Oh.
I just had never met Tony.
Okay, and how did you know his family?
Through Canoe Journey.
Journey.
Yeah, so I had been involved in Canoe Journey from down here from 2010. I had skippered the Alaska Family Canoe in 2010. And I knew some of Tony's relatives from the reservation who became like family to me. And then I met his father and his brother and his other brother and his sister, but I'd never met Tony. And so our paths had crossed in Canoe Journey for 12 years.
So just a quick summary, because we're going to talk about canoes more in a few minutes, but explain briefly what Canoe Journey is.
Intertribal Canoe Journey is a gathering of the tribes and the family canoes, and they travel from all over, and they convene in one location every year. So different tribes will host the final destination for the canoe journey, but there are stops at all the reservations along the way most often. And so the canoe journey that I was skippering, I went from Birch Bay to Nia Bay. So about 360 nautical miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was pretty scary. I mean, it wasn't scary. It was amazing. But
so did you have to get in a lot of good shape before you did that?
It was scary because I had never skippered before.
And how were you chosen to be skipper then?
Our skipper had emergency surgery, and I was the next person in line for our family to have that honor. So they trusted me with that.
Obviously. And you had practiced on canoes, right?
I've been doing canoe journeys since 2008, but I can't say that I was very experienced.
Okay.
But I did know the water.
Okay.
I've been on the water.
Or something.
Yeah.
So back to when you two met. Was there an instant connection, or did you keep having issues with your coffee shop and he can't come by to fix them?
You have to answer that one.
Early on, when I first met her, it was kind of interesting that we ended up where we are today. The resistance, the doubt, the uncertainty, lack of commitment, all of the negatives that you think about sometimes when you think about relationships that have failed. And we have both failed, not failed, but
right.
In society's definition, it's a failure. And, when you get to that point, do you really want to go through this? It's one of the things where common sense wins out. And we have this little joke between the two of us where things can change for us in 72 hours.
Is that the typical time frame?
Well, yeah, one of them.
Consistently? Yeah.
It's not instantly. 72 hours is not instantly.
Consistently, 72 hours.
Yeah. But we hung out a lot. She had a lot of issues in the shop in Laconer, which I had fixed. I'm what you call a jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. I've had over 30 different occupations in my lifetime.
Wow.
Multiple years in every one of them. And plumbing is just one of them. Plumbing is probably my long-time employment job where I just fit in. But, it's one of the things where when the talents meet and the message you're trying to convey is exactly the same thing we've each been doing for the majority of our lives.
Okay.
We've been protectors, we've been educators, we've been providers, we've been in doing all of this, we protect and preserve who we are and where we're from and what we are. And I've been doing this all my life. I've been protecting my community all of my life. I've been a volunteer all of my life. I've never said no to anybody that needed volunteer help. Only because I have so many talents. And we're all sent here with these talents already ingrained in us. We have them, they're ours. We knew them before we even started working with this equipment that we had chose as an occupation at the time. And to be able to succeed in that realm, to be able to survive, thrive, and help your community at the same time. I've been involved with all types of activities on the reservation, very few of it ever political, but always for the community in mind. Never any selfish motives. I grew up in a home where I was forced to learn how to do things early in life just because of survival skills.
Right.
Just because of lifestyle. And I carried those same skills from childhood, those survival skills, into adulthood, and start using them to be able to educate the people around us to who we are, where we come from, what we're protecting, what our values are, what our culture is. Some of my most favorite jobs of all time have been working with people to preserve who the Swinomish are. I have 3 top main jobs that I'm glad that I was sent here to do. And being a part of those is like being a part of this. It's a part of life that it's not a job. It's not. It's life. It's what you breathe. It's what you think. It's what you hear. And it's just being able to work, live. And that's what brought us together.
That's good.
That's what brought us to this point here, to the cultural hub. This is the same thing that I've been doing all my life. Educating those around us. That in itself is one of the most important things that we do about who we are.
Michelle, what inspired you to open Beaver Tales in LaConner in the first place?
Well, I'm going to go back just a little bit.
Sure.
So, because I haven't answered for you where I came from.
You have not. Go ahead.
So, I actually grew up in the Seattle area,
Right.
Born and raised.
Mm-hmm.
I spent some time in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
I came home back to Seattle. Then I spent time up in Alaska. And then I came home. And I ended up in LaConner, mostly out of necessity. I didn't have a place to live, and I had a boat. And so I lived on my boat in LaConner. It's a sobering type of an experience.
Yeah.
And then my former partner had a vision that he wanted to roast coffee. And I was like, oh, okay. I suppose, that's doable. And so we started to do that. That was in April of 2019. Mm-hmm. We started roasting coffee in the cockpit of our 27-foot sailboat.
Wow.
And then that was right before COVID, and COVID was happening. And fortunately, the COVID actually is what allowed the business to grow because we were roasting coffee and delivering that. And then we had an opportunity to open a shop in LaConner. Mm-hmm. As I was opening the shop, my partner abandoned ship, and that was probably the best thing that could have happened. Mm-hmm. And I met Tony, and part of my resistance, and that's 72-hour kind of joke, is that I was super gun shy. Mm-hmm. Trust gone. Yeah. Uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. I just knew that I had to continue on with the plan for the business because we had obligations and people to pay, and I didn't have an option to walk away from that. Right. And so I reached out to the people close to me, and they all held me up and helped me with that. And that's how Tony came on, was because Eric Day, who's a cousin of Tony's, but like a brother to me at the reservation, had recommended Tony. Okay. And again, it's family. Eric had taken me under his wing and said, hey, you're family. Don't worry. Everything's going to be fine.
That's so nice.
It is. And it's really where things come. So that will get you to what my motivation was for the business. Right. And the motivation for me for the business has always been about building community. Mm-hmm. It's always been about creating a space for my friends and family where they feel comfortable and welcome, because I am a white woman.
Yeah.
I am adopted Tlingit also, but it's, I don't have the lived experience of an Indigenous person. I am still a white woman experiencing Indigenous culture from my lens and my privilege. And so it was hard for me to see how my friends and family were being treated. And I didn't want that. And so I wanted to create a space where I could educate and help people see a different view. I wanted to get rid of negative stereotypes. Yeah. I wanted to work to help provide opportunities for employment for people who were struggling. I wanted to make sure that when my friends and family came in, they didn't feel like they were being followed in the store or criticized or, that type of thing. I wanted them to be able to come and relax and enjoy and feel at home. And I was very fortunate because La Conner is very much like that, where I would have people come in from all over, especially Alaskans, because it was, it has a lot of Tlingit and Haida art and Tsimshian art, because that's where my adopted family is from, is Alaska, and that's what I had. Right. And they would come in from all over, and we would be the gathering spot for our local Tlingits. They'd come in, it feels like home. And it was. And I would ask, well, where are you from? And they'd say, I'm from Sitka. And I'd say, well, what house are you? Or what clan are you? And they would tell me, I'd say, well, you're related to so-and-so. And they're like, how do you know? And I'm like, hello? I'm a Wishkitan. My family's from Hoona. I'm in the New Hit, And they'd say, you're related to so-and-so. I'm like, yeah. Because that's how we communicate. Right. And so when Tony came on board, I was gun shy. I knew his family and I trusted his family, and I knew Eric and I trusted Eric. And I knew that Eric wouldn't send me somebody that was shifty, Right. But I was still gun shy. And so Tony came, he fixed the sink. And then I was like, I do have some other things. Can you help me with that? But he would come and he would listen. And he listened to what the goal was. And he would listen to me talk to customers about my experience in Native culture and how I was trying to dispel those negative stereotypes. Or I would challenge people on their thought process. And it wasn't attacking people. It wasn't saying, that's racist. I would say, well, where did you come up with that? How did you develop that belief about this? Right? Like, I would just ask a question, and we'd have these great conversations, and then people would leave and they'd be like, wow, I learned something new today. Yeah. And I learned new things too. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And we just had amazing conversations, and we still do. Yeah. Right? La Conner is this fabulous little teeny shop. Yeah. Teeny. Yes. And, and then Tony approached me, and I was first like, I can't even entertain anything. But he was very clear with his intention and his vision. And 72 hours later, I was like, okay. And then here we are. Yeah.
So his mission and his vision, just to be distinct, with dating you or for the whole culture cup?
Well, I will tell you, do you want to say how you said it?
Go ahead.
So when he approached me, he said, because at first he said, I just need a moment of your time. Okay. And I said, no. No. Yeah. I don't have a moment. I was overwhelmed. I was just trying to keep things, I was surviving. Right. I was just surviving. Right. I was working how many hours? Like, 12 hours a day. Well, more than that. But I was in the shop 7 days a week, all day long, and I'd go home and roast coffee. I might get a couple hours of sleep, and I'd get up and do it all over again.
Going from the boat to the little building.
Well, and then I moved into an RV, right? So, and it was crazy. And Tony's like, let me help you. And of course, again, I was gun shy. I was like, nope, I can do it myself, And he looked at me and he said, seriously, I just need a moment of your time. I need to tell you, I'm too old to chase you. And I have a vision of you and me together and what we can do with this, because we're doing the same thing. You're doing this here. I'm doing this here. And we can do it together. And he was exactly right, because once I allowed him in, it's like our visions are so closely aligned that everything just took off.
Well, yeah.
You know?
Especially since you just started that right when COVID was starting.
Yeah.
It is a very short period of time to what this is right here.
Yeah.
For real. Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, and he was very clear that he had intentions beyond business partnership, and I had to work into that. But I'm glad I did. And I'm thankful for a good friend of mine who said, don't close your heart off.
Yeah.
You know, because I see something really good.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then about 72 hours later, I was like, okay.
So you just told me how you shaped the journey.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
To doing what you were doing by yourself together and combining the goal of community, right? Explain to the listener who hasn't been in here in this Coupeville location, what makes this coffee shop different than any other one that you've ever been into?
I think I'm going to explain it how it often gets explained to me.
Okay.
We get comments all the time that when people walk in the door, that it's magic, that they immediately feel something and they can't describe it sometimes. They feel welcomed, they feel at home, they feel comfortable, and there's a magic to this location. Tony and I felt that the moment we walked in here. We had been invited to speak at the EB's Forever conference, and we were the closing keynote speakers, and we did a presentation called Coffee is the Conduit, People are the Glue. Basically, it was about our vision and our mission, about building community and listening and hearing people and how we wanted to do things differently. Okay. And I had broken my back the September before that. And that October, late October, I had surgery, back surgery. And 5 days later, we were giving a speech.
Wow.
And I wasn't in the best shape.
Yeah.
And so we stayed at the Coupeville Inn, and Tony had come down to the water to pray the morning before our keynote. And he came back and got me, and he said, hey, let's go for a walk, because I needed to walk. And so we walked down the dock, and he said, there's a little breakfast place. Let's go eat breakfast. So, okay, so I walked down the dock. I walk into the door of this restaurant here. And I look up and I said, we need this space for our cultural center. And Tony said, yes, we do. We didn't even know it was for sale. And so we sat down, we ate, we heard the barista say, yeah, it's for sale, to somebody else. And I looked at Tony like, we can't afford this. And everything came together. I'm not going to say it hasn't been hard, though. This year has been very, very challenging financially. And we have expenses and things that we never counted on, you know, that were never in the plan. But we're managing, right? I mean, we're making it happen. Any challenges, we're overcoming them. You know, we've invested so much of our own finances and money and time and effort because we believe in what we're doing. But this spot is magic. And you can feel it when you walk in.
And I also don't think it would have been put right smack in front of your face, you with a broken back and the whole thing, if it wasn't supposed to be yours for the community.
And that really is what it's about. It's about community. So what makes this space different is not that it's a coffee shop. It's a community hub. What makes it really different is that Tony spoke. He was the closing. And it's funny because anytime we speak, and we've done a lot of talks, I'm very regimented. I have a script. I know what I'm saying. And Tony's just like, yeah, whatever. And he just talks because that's his way. But he always says exactly what needs to be said. It comes from his ancestors, and there's no script, and he just says it, So I have to allot enough time for him versus me. But he made this really profound statement, and it was Rainey Simpson put it on Instagram. And I'll paraphrase it because I can't remember exactly the words, but it was Tony Cladusbid made a very profound statement in a room full of preservations and historians when he said, we're all here for the same reason, and that is to preserve and protect. You, the historians and preservationists, are here to preserve and protect the pioneer and colonial history. We are here to preserve and protect our Indigenous culture and history. But there's no reason we cannot do it together. So I had this vision from the time that before, when I was opening in La Conner, of creating a cultural space with art and really featuring our local Indigenous artists, but also explaining like the process and not like how to do it, but when somebody comes in and they say, why is that spruce root hat $25,000? Because they don't understand the process that it takes to make it, right? The gathering of the roots, the processing of the roots, the creativity, the years and years of history and training and learning that go into that, right? Your bentwood boxes, your carvings, your paintings, all of those things are history. It's all the learning that comes forward from your ancestors in how you're learning to properly care for and collect the materials. And there's a reason, there's a price behind that. Right? And so that was the original goal for me, was this cultural hub where people could learn. And so I went home from the EB's conference, and it was before we saw Rainey's post, and I honed my cultural center vision for this spot. And I said, this is where we need to be. And so I honed it, and I created, I like just made it really fluid about exactly what we wanted. And then Rainey posted her thing, and then Lisa Bernhardt with the Pacific Northwest Art School and the administrator for the Coupeville Creative District, which we'll talk about, emailed, and she said, would you and Tony be at all interested in being on the Coupeville Creative District Steering Committee? And had explained some of they'd been working on it for 2 years, and the application was not accepted the first time, and so they were reworking it to work on that. And I shared with her in confidence my cultural center plan. And the cultural center plan has never been about just Indigenous culture. It was framed around that because that's the only frame of reference I had. But as we spoke to Lisa and as she saw the project, I was able to explain to her my entire vision, which incorporated the community and all of the sectors in the community. So what we envisioned here is a cultural center, the Schwadops Cultural Center and Creative Hub, to bring in what we call targeted tourism, where people come and actually experience the community in its entirety. Not just coming in, getting their cup of coffee. We're not Starbucks, right? We're not McDonald's. We're not fast. Don't want to be. So we're trying to produce a quality product for people, and we want people to stay and look and learn.
It's an experience in here.
And we've got a lending library, and we've got games, and we've got things that encourage people to sit. We've got books for them to read while they're here. Indigenous based, but books. Lots of different kinds of art. Native art, non-native art, photography, all sorts of things. We've got weavings and beadings and sculptures and, whatever is there. And it's very interesting. But the whole point of that was to be a hub where we could bring in groups of people. And I even took a Washington State tourism course on ecotourism or cultural tourism that they call it, and international tourism, where they bring people in to experience the culture, right? But my goal was not us, and it's never been us. And
Right.
Tony and I have never been about us.
Right.
We've always been about community.
Right.
And so we had, before we even came here, had developed a relationship with the Island County Historical Society and Museum, originally with Rick Castellano and now with Dalva Church.
Right.
And it included that, the Chamber of Commerce, the Pacific Northwest Art School, Eby's Landing,
Right.
Pacific Rim Institute, the Coast Salish Youth Coalition, all of these different people, the farming community, the education community, because we are inclusive
Right.
in understanding and recognizing everybody's contribution. But our part is about the Indigenous piece, because that's what we know. And that's what we represent. I mean, Tony's ancestors had a longhouse at the end of the dock,
Wow.
literally. This is his home right here.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to be able to bring all of those pieces together to show people who aren't from here the full and rich history of this place that we call Coupeville, Penn Cove, Whidbey Island. Right. And all of that history. The other thing that we're really trying to do is make sure that we're inclusive of the other tribes. So just because this is Swinomish territory doesn't mean we don't welcome everybody else, because I'm adopted Tlingit. And so my knowledge comes from my elders and the people who trained me in our Tlingit history. And I've had to learn from Tony more about Swinomish because that's not my people. And I didn't know a lot about Coast Salish, and I'm still learning about Tlingit. Right. But it's recognizing where, what you know and what you don't know. And then how do you bring that together to share knowledge and accurate? So that is how this came around in this space. Yeah.
So that's a great transition into the Coupeville Creative District's community project, which is the Creative Hub. And that's all a new announcement. So I was sitting there thinking when you were talking, was that on part of your thing that you had written down, is that you wanted to be a part of that as well?
No, we didn't know. So we really didn't know about the Creative District work. And so when I forwarded that to Lisa, she had outlined for me some of the work that they were doing. And I said, I have this project and I think it would fit really well with what you're doing. And it would need tweaking, right?
Right.
But I said, I think it would fit really well that we could be a partner with you.
Right.
And I wasn't thinking that it would be the project, right? Like I had no concept that they would do that.
Right.
And it's really just one project out of many that we will have, but it was a piece that was really important. Aaron Semmer, I think that's how you say his last name, Semmer, who is the current administrator for the Artswa Creative District programming. And he was just here for our Creative District reception and celebration and talked about the Creative District, had indicated to us that originally they really wanted Indigenous participation in that, but hadn't gotten a lot. So when our project came through again and they had Indigenous representation, they were excited. Like they're like, wow, okay.
There's the piece.
Here's that piece that we were looking for. And Lisa had said, and at that time I hadn't been on the committee yet. And so I know she shared our information with them and everybody was like, oh yeah, this would be great. So it became the project, but the project is so much bigger than that. This is just the hub. Like this is where one place where we can have activities, one place where we can bring people together. Right. And do that. And so we have been, Tony and I last September started what we called the Potlatch series. And that was before the Creative District was certified. We started bringing people in and having talks and activities and doing things community wise. Because we aren't known for waiting. We just do. And
I'm so glad to meet fellow people who don't believe in island time.
Well, I do believe in island time. I've got to be one of the worst. I've got to be one of the worst as far as like taking my time on stuff. But as Tony will tell you, we don't ask permission. And it's not in a case of, we're going to do it in spite of. It's a case of we aren't going to wait for people to get on board with what we're doing.
Absolutely.
That if we have to finance it and pay for it, we will. And we did. And I did that in LaConner too, because workforce development is just one thing that we do here. And I had approached people about workforce, not expecting them to contribute or pay anything, but just to try and create a safety net for people.
Right.
And try and work as a community to help people who, and again, because of COVID, I worked my previous life, trying to leave you some time. My previous life, I also have like 12 pages of resume.
Yeah.
I did workforce development, org development. I was in hospital administration. I was college professor. I was, all of these different things. And one thing that I knew for sure that really irritated me when people would say, people just don't want to work.
Yeah, that's not true.
And I always called bullshit.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to say that.
Okay.
Because people do want to work.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to work for crappy employers.
Yeah.
They want to feel valued. But there's a lot of reasons that people have a difficult time working.
Mm-hmm.
Childcare, domestic violence, homelessness, transportation.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things impact.
Yeah.
And, substance abuse, whatever that is.
Right.
And nobody's looking for a handout.
Yeah.
People I know, they're not looking for a handout. Almost everybody who's ever come to us asking for help has offered to exchange something in return. They're not just coming here and saying, hey, can I have free food?
Yeah.
They're saying, is there something I can do for you in exchange for?
Right.
Right? That's my experience. And I think, like I said, I lived on my boat for 3 years. That's about as close to homeless as I'm going to get, right? Like, I didn't have a place to live, so I lived on my boat because I could afford it.
Right.
And even then I couldn't afford it.
Right.
I didn't have refrigeration. I didn't have a kitchen. I had to shower in the public shower,
How did you roast coffee?
We had electricity.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the hookups for the boat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not easy, but you develop a different type of viewpoint and stuff. Imagine I grew up upper middle class, and I went to barely having enough to live on, and I wasn't eating properly, and my health wasn't great because of the situation.
Right.
It didn't mean I developed more empathy for that, but I certainly could look at it and say, how can we develop better support systems?
Right.
Now, nobody offered to help. They're like, oh, we're doing our own thing. We're doing our own thing. We're doing our own thing. That didn't stop me from trying to do it still.
Yeah.
I still tried to plug in where I could, but the more people told me no, the more I was like, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it my own way.
Yeah.
And I did. And now people are coming to us and saying, hey, can we join you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure you can.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it your way.
Right.
You can join us.
You were talking about the potlatch, and so it reminded me there. One of the questions I wanted to ask you were the different events and things you were doing to bring in community. To give people an idea. Plus, it's on your website, by the way, listener. It's on your the website. But of things that you're doing here, it being a community hub.
Mm-hmm. So, since being a part of the Creative District, which has been great, we have the opportunity to partner with the art school. So we bring artists down here, and Kathleen Dodge DeHaven is a felting artist, and she's amazing. We've had 3 felting classes here already. So nothing's more fun than a group of people. Mostly it's been women so far that do the felting, but I make coffee or tea, and we have snacks, and it's an evening thing, and you come in and we stab felt, and we're laughing and we're joking, but we're creating things.
I haven't done it, but I've watched that. I used to watch YouTube videos.
You should come do it.
Yeah, how they do that. It never occurred to me that it was stabbing.
I have 2 things over there that I've done. I have one at home too, but our next one we're doing. I'm going to do a voodoo doll. I don't know what anybody else is going to do, but we're going to do these little dolls. But I've decided I'm doing a voodoo doll. We laugh about that, but we have that, right? We have people who come in and we get to know each other. These are people from all over. There's people who come from Anacortes and LaConner and the island and other places, and they get to know each other. And the first thing we do is we say, so where are you from? And what do you do? And what's your name? And we make friends, right? Like you get to know people. And that's what we wanted, right? Then we've had various speakers. So we've had artists. Jay Bowen came and spoke about his art and his work. So this is his art here. on the walls for speakers who can't see that, but you'll see it if you go to our website. You can see the different things. He's also a jeweler. He's a sculptor. He's a writer, right? And so we had the opportunity for him to talk about his life with people. And we don't just do Indigenous folks, but we try to make sure that our Indigenous family have a voice and that people can hear about contemporary, not historical necessarily. Right. Who are we now? Right. Because it's not a stereotype. Right. Right. Marcus Joe is Tony's son-in-law, and he came and did a talk on Indigenous Peoples Day, and we wanted him to have a voice. Right. To show people a young, successful person who didn't necessarily fit a stereotype. Okay. He's a mural artist. He's a graphic designer. He's got a clothing line. He's a rap artist. He's a poet. He does digital art. He does, freehand. He does all of these things, and he's amazing. Yeah. Right. And we wanted people to hear about his experiences, how he grew up, where he learned his art and what he's doing. Right. We had my sister-in-law come and speak. She's a marine biologist, but she's an educator. She founded the Orca Academy at Everett Community College. It's the Ocean Research College Academy. And she came and shared her 30 years of research, microfauna to megafauna of the Salish Sea. Okay. And people were fascinated. It was standing room only in the room, and she provided that. Richard Castellano came and spoke about Indigenous history in Penn Cove and spoke about the different longhouses that were here and the history of Penn Cove and the Water Fest and all of that.
Definitely a hub.
Right. Yeah, and awesome. Tony and I spoke about canoe journey. So we spoke about the past and present and canoe journey and the importance of the cultural revitalization that's happened and the language.
A great bridge to what I want to talk about. Yeah. Is your 10 Commandments of the canoe.
Oh, 10 rules of the canoe.
10 rules,
yeah. 10 rules of the canoe.
I did write 10 rules. Yeah. Why did I say commandments?
That's okay.
Probably because of my biblical background. Okay. 10 rules of the canoe and life lessons. So let's talk about that, because that is one of the most interesting things to me on your website.
Is it?
Reading all those.
So what did you like the best? I know you had a question about what did we like the best, but what one stuck out to you the most?
Well, okay, overall, let's just talk about overall.
Yeah.
I think that I feel that if people are reading all these books of how they should live their life, one after another, when someone writes a book on how to live your life, you really just need the 10 rules of the canoe.
Right?
That's what I told my husband. I'm like, that's what we should have on our fridge, is the 10 rules of the canoe. Because every one of those statements, like I had written down, are powerful. Mm-hmm. So I can't pick a specific one, but I really felt that way easier to accomplish those rules than let's just say the 10 Commandments. Okay, well, no one's going around trying to commit adultery or trying to covet or trying to steal. Okay, I don't do all that, but it doesn't really speak to the type of life you're living to serve others, which then serves your community. Right. And so that's where I like to go. I like the focus.
And that's what you nailed on the head. So I know one of your questions was what is my favorite one?
Yes.
And I think the one I gravitate to the most is be like a worker bee, or be like a bee and make honey. Yes. And I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but the situations happen, things come. Mm-hmm. You can either wallow in it, in the inconvenience, in the issues and the problems and the whatever, or you can make honey.
So we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. So why don't you explain to the listener what is the 10 rules of the canoe?
Okay. So the first time I was introduced to the 10 rules of the canoe, I was paddling on the One People Canoe Society canoe in Alaska. Okay. And it was 2008. Okay. And it was the first time a canoe had traveled in Alaska in over 100 years from village to village. Wow. Very significant. Mm-hmm. Very, very significant. And we had shirts made that were the 10 rules of the canoe. The canoe, I can't attribute that to us at all. Those came from, and I do list that resource on the website. I believe it was the Quileute canoe family as part of the Northwest Experimental Canoe. Anyway, it's on there. Right. But it was a project that they were doing. Okay. And so they had developed these rules. And what you see in each of our shops are the 10 rules. And they're just listed. They don't have the explanations. They're just listed as the 10 rules. And
listeners, so you know, you can go on their website and you can click on one of the menu items is the 10 rules of the canoe. Mm-hmm. And I suggest you read them.
they're pretty good, yeah.
They are really good.
It's just, it's everything. When you look at that, everything builds on something else, and it's really about community.
Right.
And it's about helping each other, and it's about kindness, and it's about education, and it's about learning, and it's about making the best of things.
Right. So let's talk about, since we just talked about the canoes, I know that there's a big event coming up May 10th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I know that you're making a canoe, Tony. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yes.
And so would you tell the listener your background in making canoes?
Zero.
That's okay. I knew that. But what propelled you to do this now?
I'm a boat builder.
Let's talk about the canoe. You building the canoe.
Right. I've been a boat builder all of my life.
Okay. So you have been a boat builder.
And a canoe is not a boat. That's one of the things that people need to realize.
Okay.
We've never owned boats. We've never owned anything that would be remotely described as a boat. The canoe is the only thing we know, and it's time immemorial that they've been traveling the waters here. We've survived thousands of years here on this water. But the reason why I want to build the boats and the sails and was to be a boat builder. I was able to contribute to the economy at home, and this just takes it to another level to being able to contribute at home, bringing canoes into the family. And that's the ulterior motive, is, along with it, becomes the responsibility of everybody involved. It's very communal. And to be able to succeed in that circle, you have to be able to become a part of it. It's not something that you can do one day and not do the next day. Either you're going to be a part of it and you're going to see it through, or you're not going to do it at all. And that's one of the things about the canoes is this brought back so much education, so much of what was dormant. It wasn't lost, it was just dormant, because we've disguised everything that was illegal for us to do to preserve who we are, because they wanted to kill the man. And we would hide him in different places, right out in the open. And it's the best way to hide something, is put it right out in the open. We did it with our religion, we did it with everything else, we did it with our belief system, we did it with our way of life, we did it with our culture, with our education, with our people. So it's the preservation of the lifestyle. That's the main reason that I want to do it.
Okay.
It's who we are. This is the Salish Sea. This is, like I said before, we did not seed the water. We live by a thing called blood quantum, where they rate you by the amount of blood that you possess. And you were talking about your husband and the proud heritage that he knows that runs through his veins. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. And people need to realize that this is important parts of life. Irregardless of whether you're 1/16th or you're what is known as a pure Indian, which I beg to differ that there'll ever be a pure Indian again after the 19th century. Purity in itself is like comparing yourself to a dog. I'm purebred.
Right.
Like it's supposed to bring some type of stature. I'm 1/8 white. And I'm just as proud of my 1/8 white as your husband is of his 1/16 native.
That's right.
And the only thing is his great whoever it was,
right. Well,
was part of the family and lived and became a part of the whole. And that's how he became who he was. You know, we have always become part of the whole.
Yeah.
No matter where we're at. You know, and that's what the canoe is doing. It's
right.
bringing community to community to community together to create at the end a whole.
So is it going in the water on the 10th? Are you trying to get it done by then?
This is a dream. It's not something that you see, we're funding this all by ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not going to
I was envisioning this because if it's even as long as those canoes that are hanging up there.
If you go into the museum, go downstairs.
Okay.
Chief Sneetlam's canoe
Okay.
is what I'm replicating.
Okay. Wow. All right. Yeah, I'll do that. Take some pictures.
The only reason it isn't getting done this year,
Right.
We had fully intended to start that project in January
Okay.
and have it done by May.
Yeah.
And just
It's still really fast too.
well, but consequently, just with everything that's gone on for us this year,
Mm-hmm.
we just had to put it off till next year. And so, Tony has the wood. He can tell you the story behind that, but he has the wood. We have that, and then we have to raise the money. And so our money, unfortunately, has had to go other places to keep everything moving forward. So
do you have on your website? Do you have a place that people can donate to the canoe?
Well, we have a place where people can donate to the Cultural Center and Creative Hub. And we actually have, that's perfect actually, because we have two ways they can do that. You can donate directly to the Schwedop's Cultural Center and Creative Hub and Beaver Tales Coffee operating. And you can, $5 to $1,000, whatever you want, you can donate and know that will go toward what we're working on.
Okay.
Then we also are just instituting a membership, and they can do that every year if they want. But the membership has 4 different levels. Starts at $75 and goes up to $1,000, and each level has increasing benefits for it. So that is not visible on the website yet, but it will be shortly. I do have some people that have already signed up at our benefactor level of $1,000, and I have people who've signed up at $500 and people who've signed up at $150. And but it includes discounts and specials and dinners and events. So the May 10 event, is that for the Cultural Hub?
No, it's for the town of Coupeville.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's their long-standing water festival.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
When looking at my notes.
Yeah, that's been going on. Festival. Yeah, and we're just fortunate that we're here for that. So we, Tony was an announcer last year. I believe he's expected to be announcing the races this year again.
Voice for announcing.
And we are so happy to be able to participate in the promotion of that and in, being able to participate with the water festival.
Yeah.
So, and there's another part of that Tony has with Canoe Journey that he'd like to see. And that's bringing back Canoe Journey to Coupeville as well. Yes, you still want to do that.
Yeah.
And for me, the first time I skippered was the last time a Canoe Journey was in Coupeville.
Right.
And so that was 2010. And I remember pulling into Coupeville, skippering the canoe, and then being driven up to the community park for a lunch, and then being driven back to Swinomish. And then we came back the next morning and took off from here for our next stop.
I'm so glad I heard you guys now say in this conversation.
Swinomish.
Swinish.
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 Swin.
Swin. Mish. Swinish. Thank you. Swinish.
Swinish.
Swinish. And then say it faster, not my slow Texas accent.
I had to chuckle because there is a billboard in Burlington or there was a billboard in Burlington, and it says Swin, and then they've got in like parentheses, mish, Swin-mish.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things I always like to ask every single person I interview is, how do you hope to see Whidbey Island as a whole evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
I am not much one for plan and vision for a community. I'm more of a, give me an idea and I'm going to make it happen.
Okay.
Our goals and our objectives do more than meet community needs, and our involvement, our participation, our working with the other people is the other aspect of the whole thing. For me, if I can just get a mindset that would head in the same direction, I would be happy.
Okay.
I would be happy to see an open-minded community, not afraid to expand, whether it's culturally or anything else. Because if you think about it, it enriches the whole community, not just the person.
Right.
And that's our goal, is to enrich the community. We're not here for ourselves. We're not here for wealth and fame.
Right.
It's always been the farthest from our minds.
We get chastised for that. We've been told, you're never going to make it. Your focus is all wrong.
You should understand who says these things to you.
Just people who are afraid, actually.
Oh.
Afraid
of what?
When you're doing change, when you're doing things that are different.
Yeah. That kind of stuff never enters my mind, so it always surprises me.
Yeah, it used to surprise me too. But, that's like, for me, it's been a real learning experience over the past few years of watching people's fear come to life.
Right.
Whether it's immigration, whether it's poverty, whether it's inclusiveness, whether it's recognizing people for who they are.
Yeah.
Anytime you step out of the mainstream, systemic, stuff, people get uncomfortable. They get uncomfortable when there's a perceived loss of power, when there's a perceived loss of authority, when they have to look at their own ways of being and who they are. Yeah. And I'd say in the past year, I've really come to peace with that. Yeah. Where when Tony met me, I was a mess, and he didn't fix me. Right. But what he did was he helped me to see that if I just let it go, because it wasn't me, right? Yeah. That wasn't about me. It was about other people. Yeah. It's helped me to grow. And so if I was going to look at 5 years from now or 10 years from now, what I'd like to see is a more unified, caring, committed, empathetic, considerate. And we have a lot of people like that here on Whidbey. Yes. We have a ton of people like that here on Whidbey. But you had mentioned earlier about social media, right? And how people are so awful on social media. Yeah. And I'm going to share a story because, it is Beaver Tales. Yeah. And
tell the tale.
Well, 2 weeks ago, I posted that anybody who was demonstrating could come in and get 20% off. And if they showed me a picture of their sign. Yeah. Right. And I got a whole bunch of backlash on the Whidbey site. And it was like, oh, well, we know where we're not doing business and blah, 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 blah. And, businesses shouldn't take sides. And I was like, no, I'm not taking sides, but I'm walking my integrity. I'm walking my talk. Nowhere did I say that I wasn't going to support anybody, I just said, bring your sign in. So I posted it again. Yeah. And I made it very clear where we stand. Yeah. I said, this is where we stand. Yeah. And we are about supporting people. We are about being inclusive. We are about being kind. We are about this. And if you choose not to do business here because you can't agree with that, we're okay. There's lots of places for you to go. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we aren't going to accept you for exercising your first. Bring in your sign. I don't care. I'll give you 20% off too.
You didn't tell them what the sign had to say.
Yeah, And, but that's a lot of this is about walking in our own integrity and doing the best we can. And like I said, we've made mistakes. We have things that we're working on. We have stuff that we're continually trying to fix too.
Yeah.
But the key is to continually make the honey.
Yeah.
Right? To acknowledge where you are, to be self-aware enough to know how you're impacting people and things and try to do better.
Yeah.
Right? So that's my vision, is that we would come together to have dialogue and figure out how do we support each other rather than tear each other down.
Yeah.
And that is a scary thing for some people because
100%.
We do not gossip. We don't talk about other people. We always support other businesses, even ones that are competitive. We don't compete. We don't believe in competition. We believe in collaboration.
Yeah.
We believe that for a community to survive, we have to hold everybody up.
Yep.
And so that means that as a business, people come in here and they'll say, where can I get fish and chips? And I'm like, oh, God, go to Toby's, go to Callan's, go here, go here. There's a new restaurant that just opened up and they've got gluten-free food.
Yeah.
I don't do gluten-free. Go up there.
Yeah.
We don't have white coffee. Go over here.
Yeah.
You want this, go there.
White coffee?
White coffee is basically unroasted coffee. Oh. It's got more caffeine in it. And it tastes different. We just have chosen as a coffee roaster not to do white coffee.
Okay.
It's just something we don't do.
Okay.
But people like it. And we're not going to say, oh, you can't get that. We're going to tell you where you can get it.
Yeah.
Because it's okay.
And that's, again, to your vision, mission, the whole thing is being part of community.
Yeah.
Is to promote other people,
right?
Back scratch other people.
You lift everybody up, and so we say this: a rising tide lifts all boats.
That's right.
Right? It doesn't just lift the nice ones. It doesn't just lift the ones that don't benefit. That benefit you.
Right.
It lifts everybody, and that's what the goal is.
I like to also see if you have any hidden gems, places you guys like to go on the island that are your favorite spots, like if you just want to chill, or people who come in, you recommend places that they should go. I always like to ask that.
I recommend places all the time.
Yeah.
So I always recommend the Island County Historical Society.
Right.
Always. They actually have a display here in our coffee shop, and they rotate it out. It's items that they cannot display at the museum because they're not local tribes, but they're in archives. So rather than sit and gather dust in the archives, they bring them here for people to see, and they exchange it out, and it's great. And so that's a nice little thing that we have where people can come and see things they aren't going to see. But they have history from Indigenous to present, right? So it's a awesome place to go. Price Sculpture Forest, really fun. Eby's Landing, great. Green Bank Farms, right? There's so many fun things to see and do, and so many beaches. Deception Pass, And then I recommend La Conner. La Conner's a fabulous little place. But not on the island, but it's a fabulous little place. Yeah, those are places that I like to recommend people to go.
Right.
And then, a lot of people, I have been so excited because more and more people are saying, I had a friend tell me I had to come here. I just had that yesterday. A family from Seattle. Oh, this is just as good as they told me it was.
Oh, good. That's great. Okay.
Yeah. So, and it is out here, you can't get better than this. It's like beautiful view, places to sit.
Yeah.
It's relaxing, get coffee, get food.
Well, I could talk to both of you for hours, really, because I've thought of other questions, and I absolutely love your logo. I didn't ask about that.
I can tell you quickly about that.
Quickly.
So the Beaver Tales logo was designed by Michael Chilton. He's a clan nephew of mine. He comes from a long line of artists. And when I say nephew, I'm not talking child. Right. I'm talking an adult grown man, but we're talking native terms here.
Right.
And he's an accomplished artist, and he's fabulous. And originally when we did that logo, it was a beaver holding a coffee cup.
Yeah.
And we had posted on social media. And Michael responded and said, "Uncle, can I fix that for you?" And we said, "Sure." And so the very next day, he sent us that. And I immediately copyrighted and trademarked it.
Yes. Yes.
And it's fabulous. So the logo is a beaver. In Tlingit, that is Deshitan.
Okay.
And the original story was about the clan brothers, the Deshitan clan brothers, sitting around the fire telling stories.
Right.
Mostly false, but telling stories with coffee.
Telling tales.
They were telling tales, all right. And so that's where that came from. But Michael designed it.
Okay.
And, his whole family is this amazing group of artists. His father does all sorts of art. He's a silver carver. He's a wood carver, totem poles, you name it. All sorts of art. His uncles, silver carvers, artists.
Right.
They're amazing. And Michael is also amazing. So
tell the listener, in case someone's listening that has never been here, where you are and where they can find you online.
Okay. We are located at 26 Front Street Northwest on the historic Coupeville Wharf. Walk to the end of the wharf. It's worth it.
Yep.
And we'll serve you up as best we can, and we do have a thing here. And if we don't ask you, do you like it? It's, does it meet your expectation?
Right.
If it doesn't meet your expectation, please tell us.
Right.
We'll fix it. We'll refund it. We'll do whatever. Okay. Sometimes we can't please you. That's okay too. But, if we can, we will.
Right.
I'd rather hear about it in person than online from some anonymous post that they didn't like something.
I know.
It's like, really? Okay, whatever. But it's worth the walk. And we really do try to serve everybody the best we can. Right. But I will say we are not fast food. Yeah. Everything is made to order. We make it with love. Tony roasts the coffee with love. I make the espresso with love. I make the food with love. Everything is with intention. And so it takes a little bit more time. Yeah. So don't come here in a rush. Mm-hmm. It does take, 15 to 20 minutes sometimes to get a coffee. Yeah. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make an excuse for it. It's just the way it is. So.
Well, I wouldn't think that anyone walking all the way down that wharf would be in a hurry anyway.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Really?
Okay.
All the way down. Yeah.
But, I do, and I will say this. So I do have customers from time to time that I had to wait 11 minutes for a coffee. And I'm like, and? I did have a woman say once that she had to wait an hour for her food, and I was cooking, and I looked at her ticket and I said, "Ma'am, you ordered at 12 and it's 12:12. Not an hour." She might have waited in line a half an hour.
Oh,
right?
Still people in the food service industry have the patience of Job.
I do most of the time.
You do?
Yeah. Sometimes I can be the soup Nazi.
The soup Nazi? That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, I've been here several times. Whenever we have a company and we're going to do our little trip over here to Coupeville, we always come here.
Oh, thank you.
We are never in a hurry, and the food has been good. And they're called Seattle fogs on Bainbridge. Yeah, but it's a
London
fog with a shot of espresso in it.
Oh, that's you can do that too.
Seattle fog.
Yeah,
and delicious. Yeah, the one I had here is delicious. And I brought my son and his wife here, and we had a full breakfast. Ordered. And just took our time. What I'm waiting for, though, is I know a lot of people have seen orcas off of the deck here. Yeah. Never have seen that. Not once. But people all the time were posting pictures from this deck. Yeah. And they follow, just keep this in mind, they follow the food. Okay. And the food isn't always here. Okay. So, when is it this salmon?
Well, it depends on the orca.
I thought they were eating the seals.
Some.
Yeah.
Some.
Okay. Well, I appreciate meeting both of you.
Thank you.
Spending time with me. I really appreciate it. And I wish you guys all the best of luck.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Success. Not luck. Success.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of Local Wimby with Magsy. Whether you're all about island life or just island bound in spirit, I hope you all are audacious islanders. Yes, that is a plug for my merch. Thanks for tuning in and celebrating the people, places, and magic that make Whimby Island so special. Don't forget to share the love, tell a friend, leave a review if you have something positive to say, and follow along for more stories from our audacious island. Until next time, keep it quirky, keep it local, and keep loving Whimby. Looking to create a life filled with connection, creativity, and a little bit of audacious charm? At withmagsy.com, we bring people together in all the best ways. Join the Supper Club, where food, laughter, and great company make every gathering unforgettable. Tune in to the local Whimby with Magsy podcast, celebrating the small businesses and bold dreamers that make up audacious islanders and shape Whimby Island. Transform your home with Spaces, a personalized interior styling service that reflects your style and brings your space to life. Ready to gather, be inspired, and make your space truly yours? Visit withmagsy.com today.